I'm Mallory Parker. I graduated from PA school in 2015. And after that, I worked in emergency medicine for maybe a year and a half. And then I did hospitalist medicine, but it wasn't like inpatient rounding so much as it was admitting patients from the ER to the hospital. So I was kind of that go between the ER and the hospital. And it was time for something new. So I went into general surgery and I loved that one a lot. Then a couple years later, we decided we were going to go to seminary school. So I've taken 2 years off. Now I'm in Colorado and working on being credentialed at a little tiny clinic about an hour and 15 minutes away. So that's kind of how I got here. My senior year of high school, I thought I was gonna be like a professional violinist. I know, so super random.
Interesting.
That year, I started watching Grey's Anatomy, and I know this sounds silly, but this was just what worked for me. And I got to thinking, I was like, that seems kinda cool. Like, I kinda enjoy doing something in the medical field, but nothing that I had looked into was really hitting the spot. I didn't wanna, go to school for 12 years. I really didn't wanna be in a lot of debt at the end of it. Other professions just weren't hitting the spot until I ran into my neighbor when we were out in the town one time, and he was a surgeon, and he told me about the PA profession, and it was just like, "What? Like, this exists? This sort of ability to have autonomy, have that relationship with the patient like a doctor, but still have the support of physicians, of the staff." And it just really hit the sweet spot, and I almost thought it was too good to be true, so I looked it up, and I still thought it was too good to be true, but I started pursuing it, and the more and more I shadowed different PAs or nurse practitioners too, the more I was like, "This is it." So I went full force, and I got my undergrad in respiratory therapy. I thought I wanted to get my undergrad in something that could put me in the hospitals and opportunity to be in more acute settings like the ICU or ER or whatever. So I could get that experience and be a little more well rounded if I wasn't able to get in the first round. But thankfully, I did get in the first time I applied. But I think that background has helped me, especially in school with a
Yeah.
lot of learning, to be more comfortable. So that's how I got in the PA field. I went straight in. Yeah, I felt guilty talking to my professors at the because I was in respiratory therapy school when I had gotten accepted. And I was like, "Listen," and they understood. They got it. I did get registered and certified as respiratory therapist, but I didn't end up keeping it up because I didn't work as a respiratory therapist. I really like what you do in providing the mock interviews. I think that would have been a huge help. I was prepared going into the interviews with what the PA profession is, what I like about it. I knew all the PA stuff, the PA answers. But when it came to more of the personable, like find out about you, I remember we pulled out a question out of a hat and I was so not prepared for that. And I think my question was like, who's your hero? It was almost like I had never ever met anyone ever. And so I just was like, my parents, which is a great answer, but you gotta have a reason. And it was just like I got jumbled in the moment. So, thinking back, I think having that preparation of creating this environment of being under pressure would have helped me. If I had been the the president of our respiratory therapy class and I did not bring that up, somehow it must have been on my application or something because they brought that up. And then they had brought it up again, I think later on in the group interview. I would have never, I don't want to talk about that.
It
It
wasn't a
just
big
feels
deal to
braggy.
you.
I think when all of the tests landed on the same week and
Yeah.
learning to manage your time in a way that you feel somewhat prepared for each of. But yeah, I
Yeah.
remember certain weeks it was like 3, 4 tests or 3, 4 big things, and then figuring out how to manage your time, how to study little by little, and learning how to study and what's important was really helpful. But I think those were some of the hardest times that I remember. think I did. I think part of it too was I was single at the time, didn't have kids, and that is helpful. Um, I think we as a class were pretty tight and took care of each other. And I think that's so important when you get into PA school because you spend a lot of time almost competing trying to get into PA school. But once you're there, that's not your competition. That's your support group. And so we were really tight as a group. We spent time outside of PA school together. And I think a lot of that helped with the work-life balance because it's important to have your support system outside of the PA school, but then it's also important to create that within your class because those are your people that they're really the only ones that know what you're going through.
Exactly.
Um,
Nobody else understands.
I mean, people can hear what you're saying, but the people in your class get it. So it's important to take care of one another in that way. I think that really helped with work life balance, just setting time to get away from the school portion of it. But I think overall, I did find that, and I kind of knew myself at that point too, what I could handle with studying. I kind of know when I'm done for the day, when I'm not gonna retain it anymore.
Yeah.
So just learning yourself and not pushing yourself to a standard you set that's not reasonable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just to say I studied until 2 a.m. or whatever. Like knowing yourself and knowing when it's not profitable anymore helps. Think of it more with clinicals. I had done one of my emergency medicine was at this one place, it was Trinity at the time. But then I really liked it. I enjoyed the doctors I worked with. They had a lot of med students and residents, and so they were really good with working with students. So I did my second one there, and then at that time, they were hiring, so it just kinda rolled into that, yeah, and I loved it. At the time, I was a little fresh out of school maybe, so it was a very challenging job, but now having been a little bit more well-rounded with the hospitalist and the surgery, I think I'd really enjoy emergency medicine again, but I learned so much. It was a great job, it really was. Yeah, mine was 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And so by the time I would
Ooh,
get up, everybody was already at work. And by the time I'd get home, everybody was, asleep. So it was kind of a
yeah.
weird time. But it was
That
great.
is
Like
so
it
weird.
really was great. Like,
Yeah.
well, I was in the hospital at the time doing the hospitalist thing, and I really wanted to do interventional radiology. I thought I did. So I was really pursuing that in our hospital and it just wasn't working out. They were wanting someone with experience and I had like absolutely no experience in that. Anyways, my point is it's all about the connections you make a lot of times. So not forsaking those relationships with people in hospitals, your fellow PAs, nurse practitioners, because that's ultimately how I got the job in surgery. Someone had sent me over the surgeon's number and we kind of talked for a little bit, but I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do that. And I kinda ghosted him for a little bit, and then I and then I came back around and
Yeah.
pursued it. It ended up being probably one of my favorite jobs, one of the things I enjoyed the most doing to date. The connections, I think, are really important
No, I
in finding
agree.
jobs. Man, I loved my role, and, I worked it was one-to-one, so it was just me and the surgeon I was with for the most part. Sometimes we would take call with the other surgeons, but I think a lot of it depends on your state and the trust between you and your doctor. And it started off kind of slow as he would train me and he could see what I could do, whatnot. But in actual surgery, I was first assist. And that was really, really cool, and as I developed my skills, I was able to do more and more. We also did, a lot of, dialysis access, so fistulas and grafts. You're sewing a vessel to another vessel. We worked with the Da Vinci robot, and so
Ooh, well,
yeah, we were just kinda dipping our toe he had, experience in that, but our hospital didn't have one, so we got credentialed at another hospital, and one day a week, we would go over there do that. So I got to learn about that, how to put the cameras in, put the instruments in. So we would have our surgery days and our clinic days. Mondays and Wednesdays were our clinic days. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays were our surgery days. And then on top of that, we would see patients in that had been admitted from when we were on call. So we would see all kinds of things from your general outpatient surgeries to like surgical emergencies. There were times things came in at like 4 o'clock and we're like, we got to go. And so we'd be in surgery for like 6 hours. Then we'd see, skin things like cysts we'd remove or hidradenitis. It was such a cool job and the variety that we got to see. And I got to be trained on the ultrasound as well to check flows for dialysis measurement. I don't know how much that communicates to people, but your vessels have to be a certain size and with a certain amount of blood flow before you can make it a fistula for dialysis access. So he trained me in a lot of different things and a lot of things he let me do on my own. But again, in the surgery, I was first assist. So I would kind of go in ahead of time. I would help prep the patient. You kind of learn the person you're working with and how he does surgery, what his next steps are. There's a flow to each surgery you do, and you kind of learn. And so you're able to anticipate. And then once we were done with the surgery, he'd leave and I would close up. So that was kind of my role at the end of it. I'd do that. I would. The town I'm in
Okay.
is not as rural as the town I'm gonna be working in, but it all is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty rural. There's no other medical facilities there. It's a small town currently, but they said in the summer it multiply like the people that come in, it's like 100 times bigger. Right now, there's a physician who works there a few times a month. I think she's trying to be more full time, and then there's a nurse practitioner and a PA. When they are there, they're the only ones there. So it's kind of a unique it's very different, more like you, where you're kind
Yeah.
of independent. So it'll be kind of the first time I've had a job like that. But it's kind of exciting to think about the variety and then also putting together all the different fields I've worked in so far, which kind of encompasses most of anything you could see, I think, and most of the acute things you could see, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Wonder
family medicine component, and then there's the urgent care ER. It's not really an ER, but it's kinda like you don't know what's gonna come in. They do a lot of helicoptering, either to, like, Denver or it's
wow.
literally in the middle of nowhere. Right now, I'm full time at our ministry has like a Christian resort, so I work full time here as well, doing other things like kind of promotions and like social media stuff. So
Okay.
I'll be working there a few
Okay.
times a month right now,
Okay.
but I'm keeping my eye out here in this town because I'd also like to maybe do something in the ER here where I live currently, but nothing's open right now. This is probably the place I live that has had the least openings,
Okay.
especially for something I was looking for time commitment wise. um, but I just kept looking, honestly, like,
Yeah.
I looked on Google Maps, just nearby cities, and then I saw if they had a medical center or what they had, and I would look into their website and send emails. Sometimes you gotta pursue, especially when you're in smaller towns, you gotta pursue a little beyond the obvious job postings you would normally see. And so I've emailed a lot of ERs and hospitals around here, and I've just been like, "Hey, this is who I am, this is my background, like, if anything opens up," and I just kinda keep in touch with some people at different hospitals, but there was less immediately, like, in your face available than some bigger cities for sure. That's a good question. I don't typically put it on my application or CV, but I do make it known that there are certain things or times or things I'm a part of that are important to me that maybe I'm not available during or whatnot. So far, everyone's been super respectful of that. As far as with patient care, I think that obviously every place and kind of demographic is different, but I think you can kind of tell with some patients when there's kind of an open door to talk about that. That's not something I push on patients. You got to kind
Yeah.
of feel that person out and see what they're comfortable with. But I have had the opportunity to pray with patients or talk about the Bible, talk about church with patients. And so that's been really cool. But I think in general, you just have to be very sensitive to people and what they're willing to talk about, what's important to them. And sometimes you can bring things up in a non-obvious way. Like maybe we agree on this. I can tell you believe this. So I'm going to, foster that because that's going to help you in your mental ability to heal or to stay positive. And so just finding ways to, I think, incorporate that aspect of how the mental plays a role in the physical is important. And sometimes for people, that is talking about their faith. And sometimes it's not. But I think regardless, it still plays an important role. I think that's such a huge role we get to fill as PAs too. And that oftentimes we have maybe a little bit more time with patients and we just get to be kind of a sounding board because, yeah, that's it's so important and it helps people with their healing as well.
Yeah.
Because it does.
Yeah.
We enter people's life at their most vulnerable,
Yeah.
sometimes. And so to not forget that and take full advantage of that in a way of like how much good can we do and in what different ways, you know? That's really
Yeah.
neat. I think the biggest
Wow.
one was just, like, taking care of each other in PA school. It's so
Oh,
important because that can make you
yeah.
miserable or help you survive and help you have fun. I think back to I was just talking with one of my classmates now, we're still best friends to this day, but
Oh,
we were
yeah.
talking about how much fun we had in PA school because of that. You know,
Yeah.
that's what sticks out to us was the good times we had because we all really, we tried to have fun and tried to joke, and so I think that's one of probably the biggest thing I wanna
Yes.
leave people with.